background, there are meetings like this going on all across the state. Everybody is concerned about the future of education. You're not alone. It's not unique to Pleasanton. It's not unique to Alameda County, and it's unfortunately fairly unique in California. But it's what we have to deal with. We're presently helping a number of districts around the state prepare for and plan for parcel tax measures. We've helped a number of districts in Alameda County, from Piedmont to Dublin to Oakland and Emeryville and others in Alameda County. And as I say, we're looking around the state. Usually when we come in, the pain is already there. It is rare that a district comes and thinks about a parcel tax before there's some very difficult decisions to be made. Unlike bond measures, where people believe, bond measures become much more common now, it is a rare school district that is forward-thinking and looking at the parcel tax as one of a number of different things they need to do to try to deal with the budget situation. I believe that parcel taxes are some of the toughest elections to win. They're much harder than bond measures. There's a lot of reasons for that we can get into. The challenge that you always have when you're dealing with a parcel tax is once the crisis gets to the point that the crisis is here, there's probably no parcel tax to deal with all your problems. A lot of the same problems that you have will still be your problems. There's still going to have to be taxed. There's still going to have to be sacrifices made. There's still going to be pain. And even if we could be very aggressive to pass a parcel tax of whatever amount of money, it will not solve all your problems. So I wish I could come here and say, this is what you got to do, and you can solve all the problems, but that's not true. And most parcel taxes, candidly, start pretty modestly, and they grow over time. As the community gets used to them, as the community feels their dollars are being well spent, they actually increase over time. But the first one is very difficult to pass, and your experience here is not unique. It's very common throughout the state where the first measure was not successful. And usually parcel taxes fail not because the community didn't support them, but they fail because they were unable to get over the 2/3 threshold. The majority of the people that vote support them, but it's usually within 2 or 3 votes, or 2 or 3 percentage votes that it happens. So there's always some sort of gut-wrenching when you lose. Losses tear the community apart, oftentimes. And it's very difficult to kind of replan because we're trying to, what did we do wrong? Well, you may not have done anything wrong. The tax may have been right, the effort may have been good. There may have been, you should never get into the point of after a parcel tax is over, do finger pointing of what we should have done. It's over, you start fresh, Now, in looking at parcel taxes around the state, and we spend a lot of time trying to understand, we go into a lot of districts, we're saying, why did we lose, and what do we need to do to win? I usually look at it, there's a number of factors that are usually always in place when measures lose, and shouldn't be there if a measure is going to win. So you can look at it in either way. First and foremost is the district has an obligation to communicate to the public about what the needs are. I'm actually very impressed with this meeting tonight in terms of the openness of information, the number of people that are attending, the quality of questions. But you only represent a small portion of the community. There's 40,000 some voters in the community, and districts as a whole don't do a very good job communicating to the public. They don't do it, and I'm not speaking specifically about this district, I'm talking about school districts in general. They do a very poor job communicating to parents sometimes. And parents make up a small portion of who votes in any community. And so if they're doing a poor job communicating to parents, the person that doesn't have kids in school or have their children in private schools, they're not interested in school issues and vote, aren't even aware. So the first thing to look at, and a district has to do, is how well they're communicating to the public as a whole what their needs are. And sometimes it's expensive, and they can be criticized for communicating, but that has to be done. Second is you also have to look at what you're trying to fund. This is not, it's not so simple as you can do a poll and then say, well, the public will support $100, so we'll put a $100 parcel tax on the major. I wish it would be that simple. But you all as a community and the district has got to decide what the money is going to be spent for. And as I said earlier, that it's not going to cover all of your needs. This blanket isn't going to cover the whole bed. This blanket is going to cover a portion of it. What are the things we're going to pay for? Is it class size reduction? Is it counselors? What is it? And that's where polling candidly can help you understand what the public's needs are. But the district then has to look at, okay, if we can get a certain amount of money, what does it mean? What are the trade-offs and what would we spend that for? And that's before you even start thinking of the amount. A third, I think, that's got to be in place is there's no parcel tax that ever wins without an extraordinary effort on the part of the community. And you look at the ones that have failed, and we've gone back and talked to people about why they failed, and usually they said, well, we had enough yes votes identified, but they didn't vote. And you know who the biggest group of problem voters are? Parents. You're right. Exactly. Parents. They're the ones that don't vote. So there's got to be, before you ever do this, and before I would ever advise a district to go forward, I really want to make sure, is the commitment there to work? These are not campaigns. These are not efforts that can be won through slick mail or even voluminous information. They're won by door-to-door conversations with people and neighbors where people are explaining why they should vote and what a good school district means and what are the trade-offs if the cuts happen. So those things all have to be in balance. The last thing, candidly, is the tax. There is tax sensitivity on what the tax is. You cannot overtax the ability of the community. But there's not a lot of difference, candidly, for a voter between a $120 tax and a $180 tax. That's a very simplistic answer for a very difficult question. But the tax rate itself is not the most important thing. It's how are you going to spend the money? What are the trade-offs? What are you going to use the money for? And so those are the things that as you move forward, you have to look at it. I believe you need at least 6 months of planning time before putting anything on the ballot, sometimes a year. You also need to have expectations of people, real expectations. You know, Piedmont parcel tax, and I worked on every Piedmont parcel tax since the very first one, and it's now, and people always gasp, it's almost $2,500 a year. But I always tell people that's the only reason people live in Piedmont, surrounded by Oakland. Their home values increase every time a parcel tax is passed. So it's probably the most unique place in the state with great quality schools surrounded by perceived poor quality schools and land values and home values driven by the school districts. And when people have their kids out of the school district, they pretty much move. That's what drives it. But most parcel taxes in the state are around $100. That's not all of them. Some are more. But they usually start at a level and then increase. And in a parcel tax, you have a lot of different options of what you want to do, but you don't have another kind of tax. You can exempt seniors. You can have cost of living increases. You can do a number of different. The term of them is debatable and negotiable. They can be short term to deal with a crisis, or it can be longer term to deal with more systemic issues. We have helped some districts put on majors that have no sunset. They're on forever. And in fact, I'm encouraging Piedmont to go there next because 30% of their general fund is now parcel tax. They're one election away from disaster. Really. I mean, we're very envious of what they're able to get, but they're one election away from total disaster. So I'm encouraging